Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Beatles Dustino coming at you again today with yet another video and yet another album review video. And today, as we've been saying in the US, we're doing Meet the Beatles. We did Introducing the Beatles on the last album review, the Dustino Score album review. Today we're doing Meet the Beatles. And an album that really surprised me. So let's see some more on that on my review and the Dustino Score after the intro. Yes, today we're looking at Meet the Beatles, the Beatles' first capital US album, not the first album in America, as 10 days before it came out, because it originally came out on January 20th of 1964. 10 days before that was Introducing the Beatles on January 10th of 1964. Capitol dragged their feet, everything on it, capital of the United States, because this isn't the first North American Beatles album. This is the third. So it's not the second even, it's the third North American Beatles album, because Beatlemania with the Beatles was the first to come out in North America in Canada, November of 1963 there. Capital of the United States really dragged their feet, even let another record label get a Beatles album out before them, although it'd be 10 days before them, but that's what went down. So, of course, this is kind of with the Beatles in a way. And, of course, the Robert Freeman photo, obviously the same as the With the Beatles cover, but I arguably will say done up just a little bit better. I like the blue tint on it. I like the font on everything at the top here. I think this is probably a better album cover than what With the Beatles was. Even though I think With the Beatles, had it been like a full bleed photo without any of that, I think that could have been a great one. Definitely better than Beatlemania with the Beatles, with all that writing and everything that they put all over it, which is basically the With the Beatles one with just a lot more writing on that. Yeah, this is, of course, the Robert Freeman one there. Kind of show you the back here too, just to get a good idea of everything, because the packaging and everything does come into the score. I haven't really, well, I did too show the back on the Introducing the Beatles on that. This, of course, like I said, it is kind of the US at the time version of With the Beatles. However, there were several songs dropped, which would be Roll Over Beethoven, You Really Got a Hold on Me, Devil in Her Heart, and Money That's What I Want, and Please Mr. Postman. Added to this, aside from the other ones from With the Beatles that weren't dropped, we got added to this, I Want to Hold Your Hand, I Saw Her Standing There, and This Boy. So kind of interesting, we got one off of Please Please Me on here, and then two that were a single, an A-side and a B-side. Now that's kind of the flow and the vibe on it is kind of, part of my score, and I think where they placed those A and B-side singles within the track list here was a little odd, and that other song from the other album. But we'll get to that more when I get to the score. Let's just kind of go over some more kind of facts and figures on the album here. Of course, it entered the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2001, and it was on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. They've done the list a few times. In 2003, it was ranked 59. 2012, it was ranked 53. 2020, it unfortunately really tanked and went down to 197. But still, that's better than half of the other albums, much better than half of the other albums. When it originally came out, it debuted at number 2 on the US album chart, and the next week it went to number 1, where it stayed there for 11 consecutive weeks, only being replaced by the Beatles' second album. So pretty amazing on that. And then it was certified gold by the RIAA in February 3rd of 1964, and went 5 times platinum as of December 26th of 1991. Of course, formats that this was available on, LP, obviously, I'm holding it right here, reel to reel, it did get on that format also, 8-track, compact cassette, and CD. I originally wrote on my notes here, not on streaming, but yes, it is. It is available on streaming in the box set, the US albums box set, which with the CD aspect of it, that's really kind of where you're getting it on CD. Originally on the Capitol Albums Volume 1 box here, and then in the US Albums box set, which I didn't bring down here, but that box set, but it was also available individually when that U.S. Albums box set came out. However, if you're looking at the CD and want the true Capitol mixes, this is the way to go. And this was never sold individually. You got to get the Capitol Albums Volume 1 box. That's got the true stereo and mono Capitol mixes on it, which, of course, Dave Dexter Jr. kind of did his embellishments with the extra reverb, speeding it up here and there, stuff like that. So, yeah, if you want the true Capitol mix on CD, you're going to have to go there. Or, of course, if you want it on just a true Capitol mix, just find one of the old albums here. Now, of course, it has recently been re-released in mono only. Just last year in 2024, they did the U.S. albums, 1964 U.S. albums in mono. And of course, that was the lead one. And it did get a colored vinyl variant on this really gorgeous, and it unfortunately doesn't come out as great in the lighting I got here, but this opaque blue, which you can see, maybe if I get it kind of in the light from the hallway there, you can kind of see it's got that kind of swirl marbling effect to it, which is just amazing when you hold it up to the light. But very cool. This was a Target exclusive, but of course you could get it on just standard black vinyl too, on it singly and in the box set that came out with that at the time. So, kind of going through that, let's get on to the tracks and kind of see how it all scores out here with the Dustino Score. The thing that I figured out with introducing the Beatles is we had all those songs were off of Please Please Me, just a couple of songs missing. This one, again, we got quite a few songs I've already reviewed on with the Beatles on this case, and one from Please Please Me. However, we do got two new songs that haven't been reviewed yet because they were a single, and that's what leads off is, of course, track one leads off with I Want to Hold Your Hand. And my little note on this is I love the Lennon and McCartney together on this. I got a funny story on it. My one buddy that's a kind of a singer and such, he lived in New York for several years, working the grind there, trying to get gigs here and there and all that. And he said he used to love to audition with I Want to Hold Your Hand, but he didn't realize that he was singing both when he'd go into the auditions, the way that he set up his arrangement on it. He was singing both the Lennon and the McCartney parts, and it wasn't until his partner pointed out to him he was doing both parts, and he should have been doing it kind of separate. But I think that was kind of funny, just how much in those early days they really blended so well together that even a professional singer got fooled by it. Kind of funny on that. He always told me that once he learned I was big into the Beatles, when he moved back here, he said, "Yeah, I used to audition for that in New York with that song in New York all the time." But I did write it's a true early Beatles signature song. And I'm giving it a 9.5. I mean, how can you not give I Want to Hold Your Hand a 9.5? I mean, it's just amazing. So up next, we got I Saw Her Standing There. And this is where I think it gets really weird, because I think I Saw Her Standing There, I've always advocated it as it was such a great opener of an album and for their career in general on the album, with the 1, 2, 3, 4 count in. And it seems a little jarring to go from I Want to Hold Your Hand to that on this. I'm getting more used to it. The more and more I'm listening to Meet the Beatles, the more I'm getting used to it. I'm kind of like you're listening to the single, and then you're listening to the album coming up there. But, because a lot of times the singles do come out before the album. But it still is weird. Like, the next song is the B-side to that single that kicked off the album. I think they should have put those two together. So my flow and vibe of the album gets a little knock on that just because of that, but that's just really nitpicking here. But I Saw Her Standing There. It seems like it's a great Beatles rocker, and its third album appearance now in just a matter of a couple of years, from 1963 debuting on Please Please Me, appearing again on Introducing the Beatles in the U.S. and again on Meet the Beatles 10 days later in the U.S. also. And so pretty awesome how quick that song has got used on an album so many times. Plus, I think in the U.S., I think it was available as a single too, if I'm remembering correct here.
That is correct.
But yeah, this song is, to me, is a 9.5 any day. That's what I put it on introducing the Beatles and Please Please Me when I did the scores there. So easily a 9.5, and it's staying a 9.5 here. Track 3 is This Boy, which is the B-side to I Want to Hold Your Hand single. And I would say arguably one of my favorite Beatles B-sides. I absolutely adore This Boy. Absolutely love the harmonies in this one. And I think we got George even in the harmonies on that. People always correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I hear George's voice in that harmony on that. It definitely sounds like a three-way harmony. It's a fun sing-along song. I always say I love, kind of trying to blend my wonderful voice with the Beatles. But, if these songs aren't fun to sing along with, why are we listening to them any which way you look at it? But it's absolute great B-side. I already kind of went through that. But why not keep it together with the single on this? Maybe that would have been a better way to kick it off. Kick it off with the A side and the B side, then go into I Saw Her Standing There. Or, being that I Saw Her Standing There is the oldest song on this, being that it debuted on the first Beatles album, not the second one, where I Saw Her, or I Want to Hold Your Hand and This Boy kind of were the single accompanying the second album. It would have made sense maybe to kick it off with that and get that proper intro, but I don't know what Capitol was thinking there. But I'm really going overboard on my thought on this because it affected the score to a degree, but not that big. I'm making it sound like a bigger thing than it is. So track 4, though, we're to the first track from With the Beatles, which is now the 4th track on Meet the Beatles. But it won't be long. There we go. Yeah, it was the opener on With the Beatles. Now it is kind of mid A side on Meet the Beatles, and I always love the yeah back and forth with it. Just kind of a fun thing. And I gave it an 8.5 on With the Beatles. I think I might have adjusted that score as I found out when I did introducing the Beatles. I did adjust the score on Please Please Me. I think that's going to be happening with the Beatles also. So I won't give you the updated With the Beatles score until after I do the Beatles' second album, where all the other songs are going to be from on that, because I don't think that's fair I haven't reviewed the Beatles' second album yet, so I haven't kind of redone those where I think I was going on that. These early albums I'm doing, I think there's going to be a lot of adjustment as I'm getting more used to it. And I found when I did this, I did do a much better job, I feel, figuring out. I'm getting the feel for it a lot better. So I'm feeling a little more confident with these scores. Number 5, track 5 will be All I've Got to Do. This one, I said Ringo's drumming is fantastic on this one. I really love his drumming on it. And the extreme pacing difference between the verse and the chorus, I think, is really cool. And I'm giving this one an 8.5 on that. Track 6, so the A-side closer here is All My Lovin'. I said I love the guitar and bass lines in this song. Really great compliment to each other and great compliment to the song. Okay, yeah, Paul is the lead on this. And in my With the Beatles review, I got corrected by one of my commenters, and I can't believe I didn't notice this. I said I liked the harmony that you got with the two, both Paul and John. In reality, it was Paul doing the harmony and double tracking himself on that. So I got to correct myself on that. But it's a really cool effect on that. And it's a solid early Beatles classic I wrote. And I'm giving All My Lovin' an 8.5. So opening up, and that ended side A. We're opening up with side B now. So track 7 will be Don't Bother Me, which is George's first penned song in the Beatles canon here. And I've always thought this was a very underrated song by George, and I think it's very ahead of its time because it's at least a year ahead, or at least an album ahead of itself, as I think this would have fit in great on A Hard Day's Night. I could see this in one of the scenes in the movie even, like one of the party scenes or something where they're at like the casino or, at one of the clubs dancing or whatever. Like something in there, I guess maybe not the casino, but the club dancing scene in that, I think it would fit right in there, which is kind of funny because it's saying don't bother me, but it seems like maybe George is off in the corner at the party there, I guess. I don't know, but I always feel like it would fit in on that album somewhere, and even in the film there. So, and that was a couple months down the road after this. How much they did in 1964 is just unbelievable when you think about it. Wow. Man, I can't hardly get a video out. It seems like in a week these guys were cranking out great hit song after great hit song. Just amazing. But I feel like Don't Bother Me has always been so underrated. Yeah, fantastic first effort by George there, and a really great B-side opener on this. And I'm giving it an 8.5 for the score there. Track 8 will be Little Child, and love the harmonies throughout on this one. Fun short song, and Ringo's drums are great, and so is that harmonica. Really is a cool effect on that. And I'm giving this track an 8 on this one. And like I said, I think a lot of these, there might be some adjustments on with the Beatles. So I might do an update video on both Please Please Me and with the Beatles, kind of what I got kind of updated there with that. Track 9 will be Till There Was You, which is the only cover, the first cover on Meet the Beatles and the only cover on Meet the Beatles, which really kind of shocked me when I realized that, with how they kind of changed it up. But then that does, of course, force a lot of covers onto the Beatles' second album. But, you know, the Beatles' second album is always so well regarded, so we'll see how the score comes out on that. I think it's going to do very well. I absolutely love Paul's vocal on this one, and it's, you know, kind of funny the Beatles do it a show tune, of course, though, from the Music Man, but of course Paul knew it from Peggy Lee, who, as I was double checking that it was Peggy Lee, I discovered, and I think I knew this in the back of my mind, but she's from my home state of North Dakota. She's from Jamestown, North Dakota. So kind of a funny thing there. That's where Paul knew it from a fellow Nodak there. But that one I'm giving an 8. I think that stayed the same as what I did with the Beatles. But a pretty strong cover on that. Track 10 is Hold Me Tight. And I love the call and response on it, in the chorus there. The so hold me tight, tonight. Yeah, I think that's just fun. And again, the sing-along part of it there, you know, which side do you want to go with? Do you want to go with Paul, or do you want to go with John and George there? Simple, but kind of a throwaway song, it seems like. But just a fun song, and they all were. And still a solid song for a throwaway song when you think about it. I mean, even the Beatles' throwaway songs could be hits for other people, it seems like. But yeah, that one I'm giving an 8 to also. So this is a pretty solid album. I mean, nothing so far has been below an 8 on it, and I got one song coming up here that does get a little lower, but let's get to that when we get to that. So track 11 is I Want to Be Your Man, and I always write Ringo with all exclamation points, because it's always fun to get Ringo there. Ringo's always fun. His track on every album is just fun for some reason. And I've always loved I Want to Be Your Man, especially getting to know the Stones version of it, and just how different the Stones version is from the Beatles. I think is always cool. But I'm giving I Want to Be Your Man an 8 also. Track 12, the album closer, is Not a Second Time, which is the second to last track on With the Beatles. And I don't know. I have a tough time with Not a Second Time. And I did adjust the score slightly because I think I was a little harsh on it, but I don't have a lot to say about it. I'm really kind of surprised, but I do like it, which is really weird. I said not great, but not great for the Beatles is still fantastic. Decent closer track of album, I think is what I wrote. I cannot read my own handwriting. That's terrible. But anyways, I'm giving it a 7.5, which I do think I just bumped it up about a half a point there. That closes out the album, and let's see what the totals are for the Dustino score here, which we got the song total, which we add up all the scores, divide it by the number of tracks, so 12 tracks on this. So the scores added up, divided by 12, came out to about an 8.5. I think it was rounded up just slightly there, but it close enough to an 8.5. So I think that's the highest song total I've got on any album yet. But this was a solid album. Absolutely solid. The flow and the vibe, like I said, it's going to take a little bit of a hit. I think on With the Beatles, I gave it a perfect 10. This, I'm going to give it a 9.5. I just feel like that beginning to me, like I said, I feel like I'm really nitpicking about it, but it really did seem odd that you don't kick it off with the song that counts in 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, to me, that should always be the beginning of an album, a song like that. And then to put what is known of as the single and the B-side, to put it split at, between that, what should have been the opener. And yeah, like I said, I'm really being nitpicky here, but it is enough that it's dropping the score just a little bit. The artwork and packaging, I think, is pretty fantastic on this one. That's a very iconic Robert Freeman image, as is. I think the back is great with all the information that you get there, the little write-up and everything. And I think they really did a great job with this. So it's getting a 8 out of 10. And then packages available. We'd got it available on several different formats. Packages meaning formats and stuff in a way, but also where you can get it. So you got it on almost every imaginable format, including streaming. I figured out. Yes, you do got to dig a little to get it because it's within a box set on the streaming services, but it's there, and even the image does come up on it. I figured out. But yeah, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 on this. So this album is really scoring high. But I'm realizing, too, it is really technically a compilation. When it boils down to it all together, it's a compilation. I think a lot of those 70s compilations are going to do very well because they are the big, big hits that are on there. So I think those are going to get pretty high scores, too, with this. So, yeah, it's getting a 35 out of 40, though. So I think this is my best scoring album right now, even over Please Please Me and With the Beatles. And that is what kind of shocked me because I've always been a little down on the US albums, the Capitol albums, and I know a lot of people defend them, and I'm kind of seeing why when I put this kind of critical thinking aspect of it on there and looking at it critically and not just as a listening experience. I'm so used to, I came into the Beatles, I am obviously from the United States, I came into the Beatles though in the CD era. And of course the CD era did usher in the UK catalog as the standard canonized catalog. So I've been used to collecting the CDs and hearing, Please Please Me, With the Beatles, Hard Day's Night, the UK version, so forth and so on, Beatles for Sale, the UK Rubber Soul, the UK Help, so forth and so on with that, the UK Revolver for that matter. Of course, after that, it did kind of get into standardized throughout the world, but, those earlier differences there really confused me once I did start to explore the Capitol albums and the US albums, and threw me off just a bit. But I'm getting used to it, and the more I'm listening to them, and I can see a good justification for them. And this score, I think, really proves that on that. So I'm, I will always default to the UK catalog. It's just how I was brought up. It's just how I came up with them. My parents didn't have a lot of the US albums. They had early Beatles and Hey Jude, I think, were the only UK ones that they had in their collection. Abbey Road, stuff like that they had, but not any of the other things that were kind of unique to the US. That's what I got when I got listening to the Beatles. It was the CDs and then what little my parents had, and those albums I never really listened to because they just threw me off so much, especially with Hey Jude. How odd that was with just stuff from A Hard Day's Night all the way with later Beatles era, 1970s, 1968, so forth on there. That was such a weird album. 64, 68, 69, 70, all on one album together. But that was a true compilation, not really an album. But anyways, I feel like I've really rambled on that, but I'm really kind of just saying, hey, I woke up finally to the US albums just based on this score. And not that I've never not enjoyed listening to Meet the Beatles. And yes, I do want to say, I think that it does lend itself better to hear that true Capitol mix. So if you are listening to the CDs, I would say stick with this and, stick with the old classic LPs and stuff. And I'm glad when Universal Music did reissue it, they did go back to the Capitol mixes on this, even though I don't think the mono Capitol mixes are quite as noticeable as the stereo ones. When I started listening to this album again to do this review, I listened to the Capitol albums version, and when that kicks off, because I think that kicks off with the stereo on that, and it just popped out of those speakers, and it just kind of shocked me how much I've heard, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and how it just popped out with that little extra reverb, a little bit of difference there with that, and it really just hit me. Plus, I think the mastering on these CDs is really good because it sounds great in my car. So the Capitol albums is a very worthwhile box set to get if you haven't got that yet. Get Volume 1 and Volume 2, and you'll be a very happy Capitol album listener versus the US albums box, which kind of went with the UK mixes for the most part, and I think that it was a big disservice to representing the U.S. albums. But hopefully they'll fix that in the future, as it seems like they're doing here. I really hope that they, not only do they got this mono mix version here, but that they do come out with the stereo on LP reissued one of these days, and going back to the Dave Dexter Jr. True Capital mixes on it, because why would you release them if you aren't doing that? You know, reissue them without putting the correct mixes on it. But like I said, I'm kind of really rambling here. I've said that a couple of times already, so I am going to get fully wrapping up. Before I do that, though, I want to once again thank all my subscribers, and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos coming out. Hopefully soon you'll be seeing my Beatles second album review. That will be the next one up again. Also, please give the video a like if you liked it. Like I always say, if you've stuck around to this point, you must like it. So please give it a like, and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know your thoughts on Meet the Beatles, especially anybody outside of the U.S., because I think a lot of the rest of the world finally has really got to enjoy the U.S. albums with this release here. And I was really surprised when this came out how excited people were in other countries to get this. And I really want to know what your thoughts are on it, because I almost feel like I'm like you, where I'm rediscovering it as I kind of started with the UK stuff. And I'm kind of glad I'm getting it. You know, it's just another way to listen to the Beatles, and any way to listen to the Beatles is a great way to listen to the Beatles, if you ask me. So, and I think it's proving that these albums are justified here. Yeah, get listening to them, and let me know your thoughts on Meet the Beatles. Yeah. Oh, also, I'm going to throw this in there. I have thought I was a little harsh on introducing the Beatles, because I kept saying this is basically Please Please Me with 2 tracks missing. I think I am going to redo the score on that one too, because I think I was a little harsh on the packages available part of my Dustino Score, because yes, as introducing the Beatles, it doesn't have much. It's only available on LP. You're going to probably find a bootleg if you're finding anything else. Well, you definitely are. And even if you get an LP, it's probably a bootleg. But there is the Please Please Me versions out there, and that got a pretty high score. So I think I might adjust that, because it is technically Please Please Me, and I was a little harsh on it. And I'm feeling bad that I scored a Beatles album that low, and that is my lowest scored Dustino Score album right now, where there might be some adjustment to that. I'm still thinking on it. I'll definitely let you know by the time we roll around to the Beatles second album review what I kind of thought on that. So, but anyways, I'm going to get fully signing out, as I feel like I've really rambled at the end here, but some good thoughts kind of coming to my head on all of this. So, but yeah, I am going to get fully signing out. I'm Beatle Dustino, signing out.